Protect the flock, we rally in the lion's den. Shield to shield, the storm is thundering. Unleash the roar, let the lions run. Torch the night until the battle's won.
All right, welcome back to the Lion's Den. I'm going to have a longer episode today. I don't like long episodes on Wednesday. I want them to be short and sweet. But I've got a great decision. It came out of Branch 3, Buffalo, New York. Fantastic. David Groskopf sent it to me today, and I love this decision because it deals with things that we're dealing with right now as far as management and these scans, package scans. Anything we get like that, I'm going to go over because we are getting bombarded right now with, when you talk about integrity scans, the last thing management has on their mind is integrity. When it comes with scanning, this geofence, when you come back and they say, hey, go back, break the geofence and scan all these things, either delivered or no access or whatever. They're constantly telling us to do things that are not contractual, basically falsifying scans. So this is a fantastic decision, and I'm going to read it. I'm going to go over a couple of other things that you're going to need to use for management is disciplining us right now for these SPM scans. And I'm going to go over a couple of things that you're going to need to put in your case file, all right? And I might do this again Sunday so I can curse. And so I'm not going to curse today because I don't curse on Lion's Den. I will Sunday, but not today. And so I'm going to read this decision first, and then we're going to go over some SPM scan things, okay, that you're going to need to put in your file when we're dealing with SPM scans. All right, now this decision is 14 pages. I'm going to read all 14 pages. I'm going to read every bit of it, all right? It's that good, but I love reading arbitrators' decisions because you get a good issue statement. They're going to put the contractual language in there. You're going to get management's position, and most of the time they'll be the same. Labor talks with labor, all right? Labor in Tennessee talks with other labor reps, management in Alabama, Louisiana, whatever. So their arguments will generally be the same. So I love reading decisions, even bad ones, and I've got a bunch. But I'm going to read this decision. We'll talk about it a little bit, and then I'm going to go over this SPM scan stuff, okay? And then got some shout-outs. Let me do these shout-outs first. Let me do that while I'm thinking about it, because I won't remember it. This weekend on Fed Up with Ron Speakman. It's this weekend. Tina Schmerbach, a recently retired city letter carrier from Iowa, finally shares her story. Harassment, union neglect, management failures, postal inspectors ignoring issues, and a terrifying gun-related incident on her route. All right, a district attorney and even Congress, the corruption, cover-ups, misconduct, and flat-out dismissal of her situation that she'll be exposing. It's a long episode, but it'll be worth it. It's on Rod Speakman. If y'all listen to Fed Up, it'll be this weekend, all right? So it's Tina Schmerbach, her story. Very interesting. You'll want to listen to that, all right? Another one, I'd like to I don't normally do shout-outs on Lion's Den. I'd usually do it on that Hellions podcast on Sunday. And Hellion is not a curse word, all right? But I usually do it on that Hellions podcast on Sunday. But I'm going to do these because I've missed some of these, all right? I'd like to give a shout out to Josh. Now, I'm Southern. And y'all hit me with these names, and I'm lazy with names. And that's the Southern way. I'm not going to get this name right. Josh Butenbach. Josh Butenbach. And it even says, good luck with that name. For stepping up to be a shop steward in an office that dishes out INIs and letters of discipline like no other. Josh jumped in the fire with both feet, even though he knows our small AO office can be very hostile with management. I'd also like to challenge any and all CLC supporters in Kansas to sign up as a supporter. Hey, I like that. On concernedlettercarriers.com. I know damn well there are more than 11 of us, and I had to read that even though this is a Wednesday episode. I could say dang, and then on Sunday I'll say the word. I know dang well there are more than 11 of us from the entire state, 3 from our small 10-city route office. Yes, I know there are a lot of Renfro supporters around our area, but his time is coming to an end. Amen. And I got another one. And I talked about this last Sunday. October 26th, Colts versus the Titans. It's for MDA. Y'all know that that's who we sponsor, MDA. October 26th, Colts versus Titans. Join the NELC on the Indianapolis Colts field. So if you got kids, they'll be able to go on the field. For the pregame full field flag experience during the national anthem. We'll be raising money for Muscular Dystrophy Association. For more information, Tim Houck, 260-760-3712. That's October 26th, the Colts versus the Titans. Tim Houck, 260-760-3712. It's the 600 level, $100. Checks payable to Tim Houck. Send checks to 116 Emily, Emilie, Pine Place, Fort Wayne, Indiana, 46804. So y'all get your tickets if y'all around that area, all right? In Tennessee, go up there and support our team. In Indianapolis, go up there and support them, all right? So there's your shout-outs, and I'll do that again Sunday. Let's get to this decision. It just came out August 25th, and who did it for us is Andrew Harrison, and he's a new advocate. A fantastic decision, Andrew. It's a fantastic decision. We get good decisions, we get bad decisions, and we celebrate those that we get. Arbitration is tough, right? Arbitration is tough. But Andrew Harrison, great job. And when you hear it, you'll understand. It's arbitrator Alyssa Samarco. And I'll have this put up. I'll ask Mallory to put these up, and I got these other things I'll have put up as well. Alyssa Samarco. Award summary. The grievance is sustained. Management shall immediately rescind the instruction regarding scanning undeliverable items based on the cyber fence invisible barrier, geofence. Future instructions regarding the cyber fence must comply with the national agreement, specifically Articles 3 and 5, regarding change of working conditions. Management shall comply with M39 regarding surveillance of carriers and all substantive and procedural requirements of Article 15 regarding investigating and issuing discipline based in any way upon GPS data. Management shall cease and desist from using GPS data alone as the sole basis for discipline. This arbitrator retains jurisdiction over the implementation of the award. So we got a cease and desist, which is what you're looking for. Management has come out with this directive. No more cease and desist because you've weaponized it. Unfortunately, Barner has sided with management on that. And you can ask any B team member. He has sided with management on the no cease and desist because management has told us that we're weaponizing that. So we got a cease and desist. I just hope and pray that since we got this cease and desist, that Barner doesn't get with labor and contact this arbitrator to amend it and say, will you please say, shall comply, will comply. I hope he doesn't do that. Because to me, if you're going to, I'm going to go on a rant. If you're going to say, if you're going to get in management's pocket and you're going to come in there in front of us, the DRT, our side, and agree with management that you're no longer going to give a cease and desist, that's not going to happen. We're no longer going to do cease and desist. What did we get in return? What did we get? We go in there and we give away the biggest thing we have for non-compliance, the cease and desist. We give it away. We give it to management. What did we get in return? Surely we got something in return. Somebody got something in return. Somebody got something. If you've seen this letter, and I believe it's real, it's from Congress of the United States, Rashida Tlaib. She writes this letter to Postmaster General David Steiner. And this is what it says. Dear Postmaster General Steiner, I'm writing today to request information regarding funds that have been expended to settle grievances from USPS employees for failure to comply with collective bargaining agreements. Under Section 434.6 of the current Employee and Labor Relations Manual, bargaining unit employees are entitled to overtime pay to cover open shifts that are clearly established as work to be performed by the bargaining unit. However, in many instances, these employees have been sent home while these shifts are being covered by management or employees outside of the bargaining unit. This practice is a clear violation of the collective bargaining agreement, as evidenced by the many grievances settled in favor of those employees who are available to work overtime but whose shifts were covered by employees outside the bargaining unit. At a time when the financial stability of USPS is under constant scrutiny, these payments to employees for noncompliance with the bargaining agreement appear to be clear evidence of fiscal mismanagement. If the USPS were to abide by its agreement with employees and offer these overtime shifts to bargaining unit employees, there would be no need for any grievance payments. I'm requesting that USPS provide a full accounting of the mismanagement of overtime hours, including a statement of the full number of grievances settled pursuant to Section 434.6 of the Employee and Labor Relations Manual, a complete financial record of the total funds that have been paid to settle such grievances, a summary and justification for why the work assigned to the APW bargaining units has been given to employees outside the bargaining unit, and a clear and comprehensive plan to mitigate such grievances in the future and ensure that USPS is in full compliance with every aspect of their collective bargaining agreement. Given the lack of timely responses from USPS to previous inquiries, I'm requesting prompt attention to this concern and a reply within 30 days. And that's Rashida Tlaib. And so people are looking, people are watching, okay? I know I'm getting off course here, but people are watching. So we go in there and we give away the biggest thing we have for non-compliance, okay, the cease and desist. Management's feeling the heat, right? They're feeling the heat from Congress, from others. And so we, the union, the agent, we decide to side with management. And we're going to go in and we're going to give away the one thing that will help us with non-compliance, which is rampant. Instead of management educating their own, instead of them saying, hey, look, if you can't comply with the Joint Contract Administration Manual, if you can't comply with our agreement to our unions, you will not have a position. You need to go home and educate yourself like those shop stewards are doing, like those formal Step A's are doing, like advocates are doing. You need to go home and educate yourself on the contractual issues we've come in agreement with. Y'all need to go educate yourselves, and we'll do multiple trainings to educate y'all. Instead of doing that, they come to us, and we say, we'll bail y'all out. We'll do away with the cease and desist. What did we get in return? Surely we didn't concede that without getting something in return. What did we get in return? Did we say, look, okay, I'll go in there with the DRT with you, and we will tell them no cease and desist because we are weaponizing that against y'all because y'all can't comply. We'll do that. But what we're also going to do this. We're going to go in there and say, hey, look, we will concede the cease and desist. But what y'all will concede is our requirement to be regular in attendance. Y'all will concede that, and we'll concede the cease and desist. Y'all will no longer require us to be regular in attendance, okay? And so we will take leave as needed. And y'all won't say anything about it. All right? That's a fair shake. We'll concede the cease and desist. Y'all concede the requirement that we're regular in attendance. Did we do that? Because to me, if they're going to come up with something so boneheaded as we're going to go in there to the DRT and we're going to tell them no more cease and desist, I'm going to look at them and say, oh, okay. All right, well, hang on. Before we go in there, look here. Let's do this too. because we're having a problem with y'all weaponizing attendance-related issues against us. Y'all say we're weaponizing the cease and desist. I think y'all are weaponizing the requirement for us to be regular in attendance. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in there as well and say, hey, look, no more discipline. No more discipline issued because a carrier is not, quote, unquote, regular in attendance. We're not going to do that any longer. What do you think they would say about that? Huh? What do you think Lloyd would say if we did that? Because that's what I'm going to say in that meeting. Hang on, brother. Before we go in there, no more requirement, obligation to be regular in attendance. We're going to do that. Okay? And they say, hey, it's a case-by-case basis. It's not a case-by-case basis. Absolutely it's not. It's not. It's whenever they get that wild hair up their butt talking about attendance. Attendance control gets involved. We're going to crack down nationwide on attendance. No, this is because I read a cease and desist. This is me, though. This is how my mind works. And so it's not a case-by-case basis. It's not. Because I have a single mother at my station. And she's got several children. One with special needs. And they used to come after her like crazy because of her attendance. She will deal with things that I will never deal with. I will never deal with a special needs child as my own. I will never deal with multiple children at that age. I won't deal with that any longer. Those days are past from me. And so, no, it's not on a case-by-case basis because we're not all the same. We're not all the same. She's got a valid reason for not being, quote unquote, regular in attendance. Me? I'm an old guy set to retire. I don't have those issues. And so I used to go insane when they would come after her. I would set that place on fire when they would even mention attendance to that young lady. I would go off in a back office if they started addressing that lady's attendance. Why? Because she has a valid reason to use her leave as she sees fit. So it's not a case-by-case basis. It's whenever management gets that wild hair, they're going to come after us. So to me, if you're going to say that we're going to go in there and we're going to do away with a cease and desist, and you want me to agree with that, I've got to get something. I've got to get something back. And I'm going to say, we're going to do away with my requirement to be regular in attendance. What does that mean? I can call in whenever I want to. As long as I've got leave, I can call in. Now, y'all want to go in there and do that? Well, we can't do that. Then we're not going to do the cease and desist. We're not going to entertain that. We should have gotten something back if we're going to go in there and say, look, y'all can't get it right as far as the contract. Y'all are too stupid to get it right. Non-compliance is rampant. It has been forever. Y'all just can't get it. I'm not going to help you get it. And I dang sure ain't going to go in there and say do away with the very thing that protects the city letter carrier like Barner did. I got to get me something. Put something on the table that I'm going to get. You going to do away with cease and desist? There's no longer a requirement for the city letter carrier to be regular in attendance. We're going to do that? Give me a pen. We'll sign off on it. Anyway, hopefully he doesn't contact. I tell you, man. I did pretty good right there, not saying any profane words, any curse words. Don't you think? Because I was hot right there. And on Sunday, I would have said something. But anyway, a cease and desist, we got it. Fantastic job, Andrew Harrison. All right, so here it is. Sorry about all that. The following witnesses, I'm not going to read the introduction. The following witnesses are sworn and testified at the arbitration hearing. For the union, Jim Eisenhart, he was the steward and formerly representative. If you know this guy, he is a mad dog. He is absolutely a savage. Jim Eisenhart, steward and formerly representative. He's the one who put the case file together. For management, no witnesses were presented. The sworn testimony submissions and the parties' arguments were carefully considered in rendering the following opinion and award. Issue 1. Now, this is why I love reading arbitrators' decisions. Here you got an issue. It will help you out if you're a new steward. And I read thousands when I became a new steward. I constantly read decisions. Did management violate Articles 3, 5, and 19 of the National Agreement when they gave the order to not scan parcels in the office once the carriers left the office based on the GPS geofence, cyberfence data? If so, what is the remedy? Relevant provisions of the collective bargaining agreement, the JCAM and policies and memorandum. Article 3, it's got that. It's got Article 5. JCAM 5.1. I'll read that in case you aren't used to that. Prohibition on unilateral changes. Article 5 prohibits management from taking any unilateral action inconsistent with the terms of the existing agreement or with its obligation under law. Section 8D of the National Labor Relations Act prohibits an employer from making unilateral changes in wages, hours, or working conditions during the term of a collective bargaining agreement. In case there, see 6858, National Arbitrator Bernstein wrote concerning Article 5. The only purpose the article can serve is to incorporate all the services obligations under law into the agreement, so as to give the services legal obligations the additional status of contractual obligations as well. This incorporation has significance primarily in terms of enforcement mechanism. It enables the signatory unions to utilize the contractual vehicle of arbitration to enforce all the services legal obligations. Moreover, the specific reference to the National Labor Relations Act is persuasive evidence that the parties were especially interested in utilizing the grievance and arbitration procedure spelled out in Article 15 to enforce the services NLRB commitments. Not all unilateral actions are prohibited by the language in Article 5, only those affecting wages, hours, or working conditions, as defined in Section 8D of the National Labor Relations Act. Additionally, certain management decisions concerning the operation of the business are specifically reserved in Article 3 unless otherwise restricted by a specific contractual provision. I'll read that again because that's critical. Additionally, certain management decisions concerning the operation of the business, which is the sole responsibility of who? The employer. Management's rights, Article 3. It's a huge argument for management anytime we address things like this. It's a large argument to overcome. It's a tough one to overcome. Management's rights. Just like we talk about the steward's rights on Articles 17 and 31. The steward's rights, it's our right. Well, management's right, they have a whole Article 3. I'll read it again. Additionally, certain management decisions concerning the operation of the business are specifically reserved in Article 3 unless otherwise restricted by a specific contractual provision. So contractual provisions trump management's rights on Article 3. That's big for us. Good job. Article 15, I'm not going to read that to you. 52C, the JCAM, 15 through 24. Handbook M39, 134.21. Manager must maintain an objective attitude in conducting street supervision and discharge this duty in an open and above-board manner. We've had several episodes on 134 of the M39, right? 134.22, the manager is not to spy or use other covert techniques. Any employee infractions are to be handled in accordance with this section in the current national agreement that deal with these problems. 115.1 talks about discipline, that's M39. 115.3, obligation to employees, that's M39. 115.4, one of our biggest ones, M39, maintain mutual respect atmosphere. Handbook M41, 243, disposition of forwardable and undeliverable mail carrier throwback case. Statement of facts. And so that's why I like arbitration sites, okay? It gave you a good issue. If you're like, where would I even begin? It gave you a good issue. It gave you fantastic contractual provisions to look through, all right, to put in your contentions. Statement of facts. The grievance arose out of an incident of an ongoing nature. As alleged by the union, management gave repeated orders to letter carriers at the Orchard Park Station, New York, that they should not scan parcels at the office even if they are on a street function 721 Operational Code. On or about 8/15/2024, Union Steward James Eisenhart was approached by Postmaster Eric Smith and questioned about why he scanned the parcel which had been taken out on the street when he returned to the office. Mr. Eisenhart testified that it was practice and policy that letter carriers were to scan parcels that were on hold in the office. Postmaster Smith told Mr. Eisenhart that it was a violation to scan parcels back in the office. A violation. Postmaster Smith told Mr. Eisenhart that it was a violation to scan parcels back in the office. Postmaster Smith further advised that he knew where the carrier scanned the package based on GPS data. This GPS data is used to define a geographical fence or cyber fence. When carriers are outside of this cyber fence and they scan a parcel or other item, the GPS data is recorded through the scanner and management is notified. Mr. Eisenhart advised Postmaster Smith that he had no idea what he was talking about regarding the cyber fence. He further advised the postmaster that he did not understand why he could not scan a parcel that was on hold at the office at the end of the day rather than scanning it in the morning at the office. He felt that the order to scan all parcels during office time at the beginning of the day was improper, contradictory, and was not based on any USPS policy. Further, Union Steward Eisenhart believed that the NELC had not been made aware of any changes to the duties and responsibilities of carriers as required by Article 5. Mr. Eisenhart filed this grievance on or about 8/15/2024, Exhibit J4, page 11. Mr. Eisenhart submitted a request for information asking for the following. 1. USPS policy, contractual language manual, and or publication regarding where, location, carriers are required to scan parcels, i.e. on hold, forwards, etc. 2. Contractual language regarding the geofence and its relevance to scanning parcels. 3. Method management is using to determine where location carriers are scanning parcels without visual observation. This request was dated 8/14/2024, Exhibit J3. That's Joint 3. Page 14. Management did not respond to this request for information. That's beautiful. Okay? That's beautiful. Anytime management gives you a directive, what do we always say? Ask for it. Put in an information request and ask for it. They're going to come out and say it's a new policy. I want to see the policy. Let's put in an information request. So here's your shop steward. You give me these directives based on some kind of policy. This is what you said, USPS policy. Here's what we're going to ask for. I want the USPS policy. That's what he said. I want the USPS policy, contractual language or manual, and or publication regarding where, location, carriers are required to scan parcels, i.e. on hold, forwards, etc. 2. Contractual language regarding the geofence and its relevance to scanning parcels. 3. Method management is using to determine where, location, carriers are scanning parcels without visual observation. This request was dated 8/14/2024, Exhibit J3, page 14. Management did not respond to this request for information. And anytime you see a J3, that's joint. The case file that you're going to receive as an advocate is the joint file. Okay? Any exhibits that we put in would be Union 1, Union 2, Union 3, or M1, M2, M3, that's management. U1 would be Union. J3, if you ever see a J when you're reading these arbitration sites, the J is joint. Joint 3, so that's joint page 3, okay? It's J3, page 14. Mr. Eisenhart met with Supervisor Oliver Jorge. Mr. Eisenhart raised the concern regarding whether this cyber fence GPS data would be used as a basis for discipline without visual observation of the carriers. Supervisor, I don't know if his name is Gorges or Jorge's, did not deny or concur that this was true. Supervisor Jorge did not respond to the substance of the grievance, but rather stated, "It's not my authority. I have nothing to do with this, but just will appeal it to the postmaster." Now, how many times have y'all heard that? I can't do anything with this. I'm just going to have to appeal this to the Formal A. Testimony of Mr. Eisenhart, management did not submit contentions at informal step A. And that's a great thing. When we talk about the informal A meeting, we're going to give a very detailed note. This is what happened at the informal A meeting. We met, I discussed things, management gave no contentions. So here, management did not submit contention in informal step A. The grievance was moved to formal step A. However, management and the union did not meet at the formal step A, Exhibit J3, page 10. The union submitted formal A contentions incorporating the informal A statement of Mr. Eisenhart, Exhibit J3, which 15, management did not submit contentions or any evidence at formal step A. This grievance was then appealed to step B. Per Mr. Eisenhart's testimony, it was regular practice for letter carriers, including himself, to scan parcels in the office while someone is out on vacation hold or forward in, and there was no correction by management on a daily basis for any time before Postmaster Smith addressed him in August of 2024. He testified that 80% to 100% of the time he scanned items in the office when he returned at the end of the day. Postmaster Smith's instructions that he should not scan parcels in the office at the end of the day constituted a change in policy and thus working conditions of employment. Neither Postmaster Smith nor Supervisor Jorge testified at the hearing. Discussion and findings. Issue 1. Did management violate Articles 3, 5, and 19 of the National Agreement when they gave the order to not scan parcels in the office once the carriers left the office based on the GPS geofence data? If so, what is the remedy? A. Introduction. This grievance was initiated by Stuart Eisenhart out of frustration and confusion regarding the postmaster's instruction. The instructions significantly changed when and where undeliverable packages were scanned, adding a hard and fast rule that they must be scanned at the beginning of the day before the carriers left the office. Further, the instruction required that the packages be scanned within an invisible boundary, the cyber fence. At the hearing, as well as in the DRT record, management offered no explanation or clarification to support the contention that the instruction did not violate the National Agreement. The word contention is in quotes because management did not provide either a written statement of their position or contentions or evidence at either the informal step A or formal step A. The union argues that their silence is an admission of the violation. And this is another thing that makes me angry. All across this country, management is refusing to meet with us at the formal A. All across this country. And so what has the DRT been instructed to do? Remand the case back to formal A for full development. Why would we do that? If management is refusing to meet at formal step A, this is exactly what should happen. It should go to arbitration without their contentions, without their position. Why? Because you're not going to be able to testify at the hearing. We need to quit conceding things to management. But yet that's another thing that Barnett and Lloyd have done. If there's no contentions from management, remand it back. That will change. They will no longer run the grievance procedure when we take over. We're taking back over the grievance procedure. But that's beautiful. The union argues that their silence is admission of the violation, is exactly what that advocate should have done. The union seeks remedies that include withdrawal of the instruction, a cease and desist, order prohibiting management from the use of GPS as a supervisory tool, and that management adhere to Postal Handbook M39 Section 115. B. Did management violate Article 5 by basing the instruction on the cyber fence data? Article 5 precludes management from unilaterally changing the letter carrier's working conditions. There is no argument or evidence submitted by management to the contrary. The union relies on the decision of arbitrator Wolitz. In this case there, 1/24/2017. That's the date. Whereas she discussed the conditions under which management may conduct surveillance and observation of carriers. Wolitz considered a situation involving surveillance of carriers by supervisors from several blocks away. Thus, the carriers were unaware of surveillance because the supervisors were hidden. The language of M39, this is arbitrator Wolitz, the language of M39 134.21 and M39 134.23 is very clear. It is also very clear that the language is encompassed by Article 19 because it relates to a working condition, the conditions under which a letter carrier may be surveilled or observed. Surveillance must be conducted in an open and above-the-board manner. The manager is not to spy or use other covert techniques. And that's a beautiful decision. And that decision is C number 32778. 32778. C 32778. And it's a fantastic decision. And it's a great job. Good sight for us. Arbitrator Wolitz acknowledged that management has a procedure and method by which it can conduct covert surveillance of carriers when it has a suspicion of wrongdoing. However, neither the suspicion nor the procedure are shown to exist in the evidence before her. As such, management was found to have violated Article 19. The union further relies on Arbitrator Talmadge's decision, in this case there dated 12/3/2016, wherein the management was held to have violated Articles 5, 19, and 41 by using the PET based on 139.99 to establish a demonstrated street time by which carriers were expected to perform daily. This Orchard Park Installation New York case arose out of management's use of the Performance Engagement Tool, PET program, to set the expected leave and return times for the carriers. The carriers were then required to explain why they did not make those times. Arbitrator Talmadge noted the union's acknowledgement of management's right and ability to develop and utilize tools, including computer-generated data reports and expectations, if it is consistent with a national agreement. Further, management has the right to evaluate and manage the floor with the assistance of such computer-generated data and tools. However, she determined that the way the PET was used during the period defined as the incident date of that grievance violated the national agreement. In upholding the grievance, Arbitrator Talmadge reasoned as follows. The parties have established the method for evaluating city letter carrier routes as defined in Chapter 2 of the M39 and Chapter 9 of the M41, which developed a method of averages for route evaluations. The PET is a management efficiency tool for estimating a carrier's daily workload, which uses an exact number of hours from one distinct day. The PET derives its information from DOAS. Although management has the right to utilize this efficiency tool to assist in its assessment of the carrier's workload and auxiliary assistance request, as noted in a number of Step 4 settlements, the PET cannot be the sole basis for disapproving auxiliary assistance or approving more time than requested. That's Arbitrator Talmadge. Page 7. Both Arbitrator Talmadge and Wolitz found that the manner of supervision, including covert surveillance, hiding in the bushes, and computer-generated data, affected the working conditions and are thus covered by Article 5. Therefore, management must follow the requirements set forth by the national agreement regarding surveillance. It must be out in the open. Further, they must follow the requirements of Article 5 when changing the carrier's working conditions. In this case, they gave an instruction based solely on a computer-generated data. To stack insult to injury, the data was based on invisible, thus hidden barriers established by the cyber fence and GPS data. One of the best lines you'll ever read. Because we've been talking about this forever. And I get angry every time I talk about it. Because my business agent, unlike this one, refused to send my case to arbitration, the one that JB did, talking about covert and spying. It was a beautiful case for us. We would have won easily. It was a beautiful case. And labor sold my business agent on the fact that it was not covered under the contract because it was dealing with a wages, hours, and working conditions. And therefore, National Arbitrator Nolan's decision took precedence on that. I've talked about this forever. They were saying National Arbitrator Nolan's decision talked about if it didn't concern wages, hours, working conditions, it's not a grievance. And my business agent fell for that. He fell for that. I'm telling him, begging him, send it forward. It has nothing to do with wages, hours, and working conditions. I'm begging him to send it forward. We will win this case. Do not withdraw this case. Well, Corey, we can expect to be supervised. That's what they're going to say. They cannot do it covertly. They have to be out there with us. Remember what it says in 134? Accompany the carrier on the street. That means you have to be out there with me in an open and above board manner. Please do not withdraw this case. And they punked my business agent out. And he withdrew it. I want to read this again, this language. Management must follow the requirements set forth by the national agreement regarding surveillance. It must be out in the open. Further, they must follow the requirements of Article 5 when changing the carrier's working conditions. In this case, they gave an instruction based solely on computer-generated data. To stack insult to injury, the data was based on invisible, thus hidden barriers established by the cyber fence and GPS data. The evidence and arguments in the DRT record failed to identify any rule or regulation requiring the carriers to scan parcels within the confines of this cyber fence. The rules and regulations regarding the use of the scanners identified in M39 232.2 entitled Non-Delivery Events indicate that when an item cannot be delivered for any reason, it is to be scanned for data collection and for notification of the customer. There is no specific place where this scan must occur. Further, rules and procedures for delivery of parcels refers to M39 Section 23. Although there was a testimony regarding street time versus office time and that the correlating codes, there is no evidence or testimony indicating that parcels must be scanned at one time of the day or another. The only evidence we have in this case relates to Mr. Eisenhardt's observation and personal practice of scanning 80% to 100% undeliverable parcels at the end of the day in the office and not at the beginning of the day. The fact that Mr. Eisenhardt was confused by the instruction, that he testified there was no notice to the NELC at the national level or at the local level to change where non-deliverable parcels were to be scanned or to make a firm policy that they were only to be scanned at the beginning of the day in the office was a change from the practice. Thus, it was a unilateral change affecting the working conditions. C. Does management's silence at formal step A constitute concession? Article 5 of the National Agreement does not preclude all unilateral changes. However, management is silent on the basis of their decision, the subject of their decision, prior notice of the change, or any other factors required for evaluation of violation under Articles 3 and 5. The union argues that such silence must be held as a concession to the charges. Article 15 requires that the parties set forth their contentions and exchange evidence at formal step A or be barred from presenting new argument or evidence later. This is a long-established rule, negotiated by the parties and reiterated in the JCAM. However, the preclusion of evidence absent at formal step A is not an absolute. The parties can supplement the record. The step B team can ensure that the record has been fully developed before submission to arbitration. The step B team may remand the case. Likewise, there are circumstances where additional evidence may be accepted by the arbitrator. And she has a 3 there. The admissibility of additional evidence has been discussed by this arbitrator in prior decisions. Several factors may be considered and are based in procedural due process and fairness to the parties. Those factors need to be considered here as management has presented no evidence at any step herein. She said those factors need not be considered here. Those factors need not be considered here as management has presented no evidence in any step herein. However, where one party remains silent on both contentions and evidence at informal step A and formal step A, and the step B team neither supplements the record nor remands the case, an arbitrator is hard-pressed to consider anything offered by management. The union argues that management's silence is concession to all grievances raised. In support of that position, the union relies on arbitrator Jacobs' decision as well as El Khoury and El Khoury, 8th edition, chapter 8414, I4, for the premise that a party's failure to present evidence or a witness failure to testify should be afforded a negative inference. The failure of a party to call as a witness a person who is available to it and who should be in a position to contribute informed testimony may permit the arbitrator to infer that had the witness been called, the testimony adduced would have been adverse to the position of that party. Where an employer failed to have a single accusing witness appear, however, the arbitrator expressed concern because of the accuser's absence and found insufficient evidence to support the employee's discharge. That's El Khoury and El Khoury. Arbitrator Aaron, in his national panel decision, stated as follows: I am fully in agreement with Arbitrator Mittenthal that the provisions of Article 15 requiring that all of the facts and arguments relied upon by both parties must be fully disclosed before the case is submitted to arbitration should be strictly enforced. In this case, therefore, I have given no consideration to any of the arguments advanced by the Postal Service. Arbitrator Mittenthal stated in his decision regarding new evidence and argument, the difficulty here is the lateness of this argument. Article 15 describes in great detail what is expected of the parties in the grievance procedure. The Postal Service's Step 2 decision must make a full statement if its understanding of the contractual provisions involved. Its Step 3 decision must include a statement of any additional contentions not previously set forth. Its Step 4 decision must contain an adequate explanation of the reasons therefor. In the present case, the silence of management is in the violation of Article 15's requirement to fully set forth contentions and exchange supporting evidence prior to the mediation. This arbitrator can give no consideration to the arguments advanced by management. The grievance is sustained. D. What is the remedy? The union requests remedies including a cease and desist order and an order that management rescind their instruction. The most basic considerations for remedy in arbitration may be considered from two viewpoints. 1. Whether the arbitrator has the power to award a specific remedy, and 2. Whether, assuming that the arbitrator has the power, the remedy is warranted in a particular case. El Khoury and El Khoury, 8th edition, chapter 18, page 1174. While the arbitrator has the power to award appropriate remedies to fit the specific situation under the Steelworkers Trilogy, the remedy must address the harm caused. As Arbitrator Mittenthal stated in case there, the purpose of a remedy is to place employees and management in the position they would have been, and the remedy should serve to restore the status quo ante. As the term remedy implies, it should serve to correct the problem. While the arbitrator has the power to award appropriate remedies to fit the specific situation under United Steelworkers Trilogy, the remedy must be specific enough to address the harm caused. The harm caused is the uncertainty of the instruction, the change in working conditions of the carriers, the use of computer data as the sole determining factor in discipline, the fact that no discipline has been issued. Carriers, including Mr. Eisenhart, were questioned by management about why he scanned an item on the cyber fence GPS data. This may ultimately create a hostile working environment, as was suggested by Arbitrator Talmadge in her decision discussed herein. And that's a fantastic decision for us right there. A fantastic position. Because again, my business agent, when they were doing all these things to us, he's like, well, no discipline's been issued. I know it, but they're giving us all investigative interviews. Every day they're questioning us. Every day they're badgering us about this. Every day. It's causing a hostile working environment. Yeah, but wait for discipline. We'll address it when discipline's been issued. And remember, JB trapped him. He said, hey man, they're still doing it. Well, wait till discipline's been issued. He said, good, we finally have discipline. You know what they did? They just addressed the discipline. So he just lied to us like Renfro. Because how they played it here was perfect. Hey, we've not been disciplined yet. They wouldn't answer the question about whether they could discipline us or whether they would discipline us. They've not disciplined us yet, but they're questioning us about it. And if they're questioning about us, what does that mean? They're inquiring as to certain things. That could potentially lead to discipline, and it could potentially lead to create a hostile working environment. That's what she said. The harm caused is the uncertainty of the instruction, the change in working conditions of the carriers, the use of computer data as the sole determining factor in discipline, the fact that no discipline has been issued. Carriers, including Mr. Eisenhart, were questioned by management about why he scanned an item on the cyber fence GPS data. This may ultimately create a hostile working environment. That's beautiful. As was suggested by Arbitrator Talmadge in her decision discussed herein. It is hereby ordered that the grievance is sustained. Management shall immediately rescind the instruction regarding scanning undeliverable items based on the cyber fence invisible barrier. Future instructions regarding the cyber fence must comply with the national agreement, specifically Articles 3 and 5, regarding change of working conditions. Management shall comply with the M39 regarding surveillance of carriers and all substantive and procedural requirements of Article 15 regarding investigating and issuing discipline based anyway upon GPS data. Management shall cease and desist from using GPS data alone as the sole basis for this discipline. So there's a fantastic, fantastic award. And great job by everybody involved with that. That's a fantastic job. We need many, many more of those because we're dealing with that every day. This geofence, right? You have carriers coming back and they're like, hey, take these parcels outside the geofence and scan them all on hold or scan them all no access or whatever. You've got a great decision now that will go with you. It can be put in your contentions, okay? And I may read that again Sunday because it's a good one. It's a good one for us. All right, I'm already too long. We're going to cover this really quickly. SPM scans. SPM scans. When managements give us instructions, now they're issuing discipline based on SPM scans, okay? Now, again, you have the step 4 about scanner data. Can't be the sole determinant for discipline, okay? And I'll cover all this again Sunday. Scanner data alone can't be the sole determinant for discipline. They're issuing these SPM discipline based off these SPM scans based off of scanner data. I've got 2 things that are going to help you with this. All right, 2 things that are going to be critical for us, the way we argue these things. All right, here's somebody sent me a scanner message, and this is from management. Attention everyone, from now on, if you get a sampling request and you have already passed the location, you must go back to the location and complete the sampling request. Thank you all and be safe. I would grieve that message. Okay, we're going to have to be preemptive here. We're going to have to go on the offensive. We can't wait for discipline. I'm going to go on and address this scanner message. Attention everyone, from now on, if you get a sampling request and you have already passed the location, you must go back to the location and complete the sampling request. Thank you all and be safe. Now, one of the things I'm going to put up is one of the things I was talking about earlier. It's the SPM SOP, SPM scan SOP, and it's called Internal Service Performance Measurement On-Street First Mile Sampling Process. Now, these sampling requests is a major thing for the Postal Service. A major thing for the Postal Service. It's one of those things that DeJoy put in his plan for this 10-year plan for the Postal Service. This is one of those things, this SPM scans. So it's one of the biggest things that they have. So obviously, they're going to be butthurt if it's not going like they had hoped. And they're going to take it out on who? The carrier. So this thing is an internal service performance measurement on-street first mile sampling process. Now what we want to do is we're going to show that the scanners are not accurate. Okay, that's one of the things that we'll use in our defense. Besides that, scanner data can't be the sole determinant for discipline. So it's got questions and answers. So question 16 of their SOP. Why might a carrier not receive a program sampling request? The following situations could prevent a carrier from receiving sampling request. Geolocation of address. If the latitude, longitude recorded in the system is not centered on the delivery point, the MDD may not trigger. That's all I need to defeat discipline. Any doubts raised must go in favor of the accused. Every arbitrator knows that, and that would be a contention. Any doubts raised must go in favor of the accused. We use it all the time in arbitration. Any doubts I bring forward to you, Madam or Mr. Arbitrator, any doubts that I bring forward, they must go in favor of Corey. They have to. They got to go in favor of the accused. So I'll read this again. Why might a carrier not receive a program sampling request? The following situations could prevent a carrier from receiving sampling request. Geolocation of address. If the latitude, longitude recorded in the system is not centered on the delivery point, the MDD may not trigger. MDD route ID. The carrier must enter the correct and current route ID into the MDD. The MDD only receives delivery sampling request for the entered route ID. MDD software version. MDDs need the latest software update to receive sampling request. This update is pushed to the MDDs when they are cradled each evening. Please see question 18 for instructions to check the MDD software version. Here's question 17. If the MDD has weak cellular or GPS signal, can the carrier receive sampling request alerts? Can the MDD to transmit the data to RIMS? The sentence is misspelled. It's not me. It says, can the MDD to transmit the data to RIMS? If the MDD has a weak cellular signal, the MDD may not be able to transmit data to RIMS. May not is all I need in discipline. May not. Those two words, if we're going to talk about raising doubts, may not. If the MDD has a weak cellular signal, the MDD may not be able to transmit data to RIMS. However, this should not prevent the carrier from receiving sampling request alerts. If the MDD has a weak GPS signal, the carrier may not be able to receive sampling request alerts. All right. If the MDD has a weak GPS signal, the carrier may not be able to receive sampling request alerts. If I say I didn't get it, and they say, we're showing that you did, the MDD is what I have. That's the scanner. I've got it. Okay? If the MDD, what the carrier has with him on his person, has a weak GPS signal, the carrier may not be able to receive sampling request alerts. All right? May not. Question 36. What should the carrier do if the alert does not trigger until after the carrier delivers the mail? Let me read this again, what this screenshot said. Attention everyone, from now on, if you get a sampling request and you have already passed the location, you must go back to the location and complete the sampling request. Thank you, and I'll be safe. That was what came out over the scanner. Question 36. This is their SOP. What should the carrier do if the alert does not trigger until after the carrier delivers the mail? The carrier should not backtrack. That's 36. The carrier should not backtrack or pull the mail out of the box for sampling. This could result in scanning mail delivered on a previous day, which would provide incorrect data for the delivery measurement. If an alert does not trigger until after the carrier has delivered the mail, the carrier should, from the work order screen, initiate the work order by pressing Enter. On the sampling screen, press Enter. When prompted that the sample is not completed, select 3. Already passed address to close the work order. Now they're telling us in the SOP to do what management is giving us discipline for today. No more already passed address. That's what they're telling us on stand-up talks on the workroom floor. No longer can you say already passed address. How many of y'all been told that? This is the SOP. When prompted that the sample is not completed, already passed address to close the work order. That's what they're saying you must do. The already passed address option is not available for collection sampling request. So they're telling us to push select 3, already passed address. 37, why does the MDD sometimes alert after the carrier delivers the mail? Now listen to me. Listen, because we're going to try to show that these scanners are incorrect. We've already done that with their own SOP. 37, why does the MDD sometimes alert after the carrier delivers the mail? For delivery, sampling requests trigger when the MDD is within a certain radius of the sampling location. If the delivery location coordinates recorded in the system do not quite match the physical delivery address coordinates, the MDD may trigger at a nearby location instead of triggering at the specific delivery address. I'll read that again. For delivery, sampling requests trigger when the MDD is within a certain radius of the sampling location. If the delivery location coordinates recorded in the system do not quite match the physical delivery address coordinates, the MDD may trigger at a nearby location instead of triggering at the specific delivery address. 38. What should the carrier do if the work order triggered but the carrier forgot to do the sampling? If a work order alerted but the carrier forgot to sample the mail when making the delivery, the carrier should not backtrack or pull the mail out of the box for sampling. I'll read that again. If a work order alerted but the carrier forgot to sample the mail when making the delivery, the carrier should not backtrack or pull the mail out of the box for sampling. This could result in scanning mail delivered on a previous day, which would provide incorrect data for the delivery measurement. The carrier should not process the work order. The following day, all unprocessed work orders are cleared and the MDD reset. Now, how many of y'all been given training on that? On the MDD device, what to do, what not to do, how to handle those things? How many of y'all been given training on that? That would be another contention, okay? One of the most important things we can use, and it's an OIG report, accuracy of reported service performance. And this came out of June of last year. Accuracy of reported service performance. This is dealing with SPM scans. And this is on page 7. Now, you need to put this in your contentions. It's a bunch of pages. You're going to print out the whole thing. Because what this is this is the OIG and the Postal Service going at each other. The OIG comes out with a report, and the Postal Service is challenging this report. And who is caught in the middle? The city letter carrier. The Postal Service is saying that the OIG report is wrong. The OIG report is saying there's problems with y'all's technology. And the Postal Service is saying, no, there's not. All the data that the OIG has found, the Postal Service is challenging that data. These things need to be going in our case files. Why? I'm wanting to show that the Postal Service and the OIG can't even tell you what's going on. They're both in disagreement. And yet I'm going to be disciplined? You have management's SOP telling you what? We have issues with the scanners. Sometimes it's not going to work right. It may not trigger these things. And who is caught in the middle? Us, the carrier. And GPS data can't be the sole determinant for my discipline. I've got a lot of problems with this data. I've got a lot of problems with these scanners. It's telling you that it may not trigger. It may not give me alert on my MDD device. I'm telling you I never got it. I'm telling you I was already past it. They're telling me to go back, yet the SOP's telling me not to. Which one do I obey? Okay? On page 7, limitations in technology. This is the OIG report. Limitations in technology. The scanners used to notify carriers when to complete sample requests and to capture scans rely on cell phone or GPS signal. Listen to me. When there is an area without cell service, the scanners will not work, or the request for sampling may not be sent until after the carrier has already delivered for that address. And what did the SOP say? Don't go back. This results in sample requests not being completed and included in SPM. I'll read this. This is the OIG. Limitations in technology. The scanners used to notify carriers when to complete sample requests and to capture scans rely on cell phone or GPS signal. When there is an area without cell service, the scanners will not work, or the request for sampling may not be sent until after the carrier has already delivered for that address. And what are they telling us? Do not press already passed address. Go back. The SOP tells us not to. So, again, here's the carrier in the middle. This results in a sample request not being completed and including in the SPM. Carrier compliance with delivery scanning. This is starting on page 7. This is on page 8 now. This is of their report. Carrier compliance with delivery scanning. Carriers do not always complete requested sampling for delivery scans. While the Postal Service met its target for completing 80% of sampling requests sent to carriers, we found that some sampling classifications were not included when calculating whether it met this target. For example, if carriers do not complete a sampling request, they must enter a reason into the scanning device why the scan was not completed. When the carrier enters past address, no trigger, other, and denied, the Postal Service excludes these missed scans when determining if it met its target for completing sampling request. When carriers routinely mark sampling request as past address, no trigger, other, and denied, it can limit the representativeness of delivery data collected. The most common reason carriers entered for not completing a sampling request was past address. Wonder why? Which they select when they receive an alert from their scanner with a request to scan selected pieces, but the carrier is already beyond the delivery point. This occurred in over 20% of the requested delivery samples. Now, if y'all are real bored or if y'all are real nerdy, get this OIG report. It has all the data. All of it has included for audit measure compliance, delivery sample data included in SPM system, sampling classification, sampling explanation, total number of scans, 26 million, percentage of scans, 40%. It's got everything if you're just real dang bored. Page 9. While there are times when it is valid for carriers to not complete sampling requests, we found routes with significantly elevated amounts of sampling requests not completed. Specifically, we found 24,544 or 10% of all routes entered past address, denied, or ignored for more than 50% of the sample requests received. There is no way to determine if the issues with scanning were caused by carrier noncompliance or limitations with the scanner. However, by excluding these scan classifications and not evaluating if carriers are complying with delivery scanning policies, there is an increased risk routes are not being represented equally in the data. Now, here's the OIG. This is why this must go in our case files. Here's the OIG. And this is what they said after they have done their... Now, these are the expert investigators. They're federal investigators, right? Office of Inspector General. They're federal investigators, experts. This is what they said. There is no way to determine if the issues with scanning were caused by carrier noncompliance or limitations with the scanner. That's the OIG. There is no way. You know what that means? It means there's no way. There is no way to determine if the issues with scanning were caused by carrier noncompliance or limitations with the scanner. Carrier scanning more pieces of mail than requested. We found over 1 million sampling events, or about 2% of the total, where the number of pieces scanned was greater than the number requested. Management stated that they had implemented a system to limit the scans to only allow for 4 more than the requested number of scans. However, nearly 100,000 sampling events included carriers overscanning by 4 or more pieces. See Figure 3. Indicating that the system the Postal Service developed to prevent carriers from overscanning is not working properly. This is what I'm talking about. We need to show that these scanners are defective. There's issues with these scanners. They think that they're the Holy Grail. Matter of fact, your president has said we're going to base route inspections off of these scanners. They're so accurate. The OIG is telling you not, and the Postal Service is telling you not. Your president, he thinks we should adjust routes off of them. I'll read that again. Indicating that the system the Postal Service developed to prevent carriers from overscanning is not working properly. Overscanning is both a waste of resources and can be a potential source of bias in the SPM system. Scanning fewer pieces of mail than requested. Inversely, we identified 46,481, 0.008%, of 5.7 million partially completed samples where Postal Service employees were expected to scan at least 20 or more mail pieces than they did. For example, we identified a sample request where a carrier scanned only 2 pieces when the sampling request expected 45. While the number of pieces expected is only an estimate of the number of mail pieces that will arrive that day. The extreme disparity between the number of pieces expected and the number of pieces scanned in these instances indicates that either employees are not scanning all pieces or there is an error in the calculation of pieces expected. Put this in your file. The SPM system requires a certain number of samples be conducted nationwide each quarter. If postal employees do not complete the samples as requested, the system will continue to request the samples from other employees until enough samples have been completed. This results in missing performance data on certain routes. Additionally, when employees over or underscan, it can impact the overall representativeness and reliability of the data by artificially increasing or decreasing the data for those routes. Therefore, carrier noncompliance with requested sampling can cause the data to not be equally weighted and representative of the population. Postal Service's response. Management partially agreed with this finding. The Postal Service disagreed that when the employees over or underscan it can impact the overall representativeness and reliability of the data by artificially increasing or decreasing the data for those routes. Additionally, the Chief Data and Analytics Officer does not agree with the data depicted in Figure 3. Management agreed with recommendations 1 and 2 and provided a target implementation date for recommendations 1 of September 30th, 2024. For recommendation 2, management provided documentation for OIG to consider closing the recommendation upon issuance of the report. OIG evaluation. Regarding management's partial disagreement with finding 1, we recognize the service performance system is a substantial and robust system, and as noted in our report, we identified limitations in acceptance and delivery sampling that may impact the representativeness of the data. Management comments were responsive to recommendation 1 as they stated they will determine the cost to develop a system to track carrier compliance and will implement if feasible and practicable. Management's comments were also responsive to recommendation 2 as the Postal Service has implemented a system which limits scanning by carriers. If additional scanning is attempted, the scanner displays a warning pop-up and prevents further scanning. Based on our review of the evidence provided, the OIG considers the recommendation closed upon the issuance of the report. Now, that's all I'm going to read. The report is forever long. It is forever long. It's 37 pages. All right? And so you need to get that and read it. But all the way through it, the Postal Service and management are going at it, the OIG. Neither one of them agrees with each other. In the entire report, they don't. That report may be longer than that. But anyway, you get the gist of it. So it's a long report, and they're going at it the whole way through. The OIG has their findings. The Postal Service doesn't agree with them. And so that's good for us because we're being disciplined off of these things, and they don't even know what's right or wrong, okay? So there's your episode. We got some SPM scans, a fantastic decision out of Branch 3, Buffalo. Fantastic job by everyone involved. A beautiful case for us, okay? When we go forward, we'll put that in our contentions. It's good for advocates to use. Talking about the geofence. She even said we're basing things off of an invisible fence. That's how ridiculous that sounds, and that's how she may say, we're basing things off an invisible fence, for God's sake. And so, beautiful decision. Beautiful decision. I'll have all these things up, okay? And so, there's the Lion's Den. Much too long. Hour and 14 minutes. I don't like that. I like 30-minute episodes on Lion's Den. I don't want to lose y'all's attention. And so, anyway, we'll be back on Sunday with From 8 Arbitration. I may do this whole thing again. It's that important because there are some that will listen to this that will not listen to From 8 Arbitration. And there are some on From 8 Arbitration that will not listen to this. And so, because they like the profane language. I don't get that. But anyway, that's what we'll do Sunday. All right. So, good episode for you. Good episode for you. Things that we're dealing with on the working floor today. Next Wednesday, I'll be back. We'll get back into route protection, okay? Route protection. That's the most important. September 1 is coming. We'll get back into it, all right? So I love you very much, Light Blue. We're making headway, all right? We're making headway, and I appreciate you to death. The work that you do every single day, and you see how they come after us. You see these things here. We're going to keep doing our job on the street. We are the backbone of this company. We are. Nobody else is. Nobody's sitting in a chair. Nobody out there walking these streets, delivering on these routes. You know, the dangers that we get into, you know. The only time management will ever get hurt is if they fall out of their chair reaching for a bag of Funyuns. That's the only time they will ever incur an injury, is if they do that, reaching for that bag of Funyuns and fall out of their chair and they'll sprain their ankle or knee or something, or elbow or shoulder. That's the only time they ever worry about having an injury. Every day we go out, our life is on the line. Every single day we go out. Talked to a young lady today that was going through a yard. 4 German Shepherds, not on a leash, came after her. And the owner came out and chastised her for walking through the yard. She's like, hey, I had no idea. You know, if you don't want me walking through the yard, that's fine. 4 German Shepherds, if they would have got that young lady, they would have killed her. We deal with that every single day. Every single day. We're dealing with German Shepherds and they're dealing with bags of Funyuns. We're not the same. We're not the same. So, all right, I'm going to get off here before I start cursing. I love you very much, Light Blue. I love you. Understand that. All right. Change is coming. I love you. You have a fantastic rest of the week. College football starts. I'm so excited. College football is back on, baby. And I'm about it. I'm about it. Saturday will be a good day for me. Go Vols. And I'll talk to y'all Sunday, all right? I love you. Bye.